Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Tim Riker. My name sign is T on the forehead. I teach American Sign Language. I'm a senior lecturer at Brown University here in Rhode Island. And I know that we've got people from all over the country coming to attend tonight's webinar. I'm very excited for all of you to watch our dialogue, which is a continuation from October 23rd, which was last week on Monday. This is our second webinar where we continue to the discussion about the deaf community. Are you ready for AI? So our discussion so far is focused on the interpreting aspect of AI for ASL interpreters and what that's going to look like in the future, how that's going to impact the deaf community, and what we have to look forward to. So tonight, we're going to continue our enthralling discussion. To give an image, I'm a white male with facial hair. I have black colored shirt on that is long sleeved. My background is gray. It's a plain gray background. And so now I'll go ahead and turn it over to my guests for tonight. If you wouldn't mind giving me your name, where you're from, how you became interested, or how you're involved in AI, and also a visual description of yourself.
Maybe Jillian.
Sure. Hi, I am Jillian Forshner. I've been involved in the field of ASL for more than 20 years. I work at a school for the deaf as an ASL model. I do some tutoring. I teach both the first language and second language at the deaf school and at a university. My visual description is that I have brownish grayish hair back in a bun, a black t-shirt on that's short-sleeved with a red bracelet. I have a brown background.
All right, let's go to Erin.
Erin saying hello. Yes, my name is Erin Sanders Sigmund. My name sign is touching the eyes like this. I am from the middle of nowhere. I am a deaf interpreter from the middle of nowhere in Vermont, and I work with Safe AI and the advisory group. I have been a coordinator for services for many, many years, and I am curious about working with AI. I've got caramel skin, female. I am wearing a purple shirt that's collared. I've got a black sweater. I've got my hair pulled up in a black wrap. I've got on pink glasses, chakra earrings. Yeah, next person.
Yes, hi. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here again. It's been a very interesting discussion on an interesting topic. My name is Yoel. This is my sign name. I shake the Y hand shape, and my last name is Buzgalos. I am at RIT, which is Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. I am in the software engineering field, and I'm working towards my degree.
If you don't mind adjusting your camera a little bit.
And for a description of myself, I'm wearing a yellow shirt. I have light facial hair. I have a cream-colored background, and I'm a man.
Great. Yoel, would you mind adjusting your camera down a little bit so we can see your full body?
Sorry about that.
There we go. Perfect.
I have a blue background.
There you go. Before we pass it to Steph, I just want to emphasize that this event was supported by an advisory group for AI and sign language interpreting. This discussion today is really giving us just a broad perspective of things. We will be gathering more research as time goes on and information, and gathering more from the deaf community. And as far as AI and Safe AI Task Force, SAFE, AI means all the stakeholders that are involved, that are represented, how to advocate for, equitable and fair regulatory processes of AI. And Steph is going to go ahead and expound on that a little bit. And that'll come up in our discussion, but we just wanted to give you a broad understanding of the topic being discussed today. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Steph to continue with that.
Thank you, Tim. Again, I'm so happy to have this group here, and I'm ready to have this great discussion with each other tonight. Last week, there were some audience members who were a little bit confused about the Zoom process. This is not like a regular meeting, so you won't have your camera on. You will only see us who are here, the panelists. We do have some interpreters, but you won't be able to see the interpreters. They will be speaking in English, so that those who are hearing in the audience will be able to catch that. We have a Q&A, but there is no chat enabled. But the Q&A is open for you to put all your questions in there, so bring it on. We'd love to have those. We might not be able to answer them all right now, but we'll collect them and we'll let you know when all of the questions and answers and things like that. And after the third meeting, we'll figure out how we're going to disseminate those. Tonight, our topic is a little bit different than the one we had previously. Last week was more of an introduction. It was an open discussion, and the first time that we all met with each other to discuss the topic of AI. We were trying to get the pulse of the community, how you're feeling, your concerns, anything positive, and anything that you're wondering about. So that was last week. So this week, tonight, we're going to expand a little bit more on the idea of AI with sign language recognition. And we're going to abbreviate that to SLR, sign language recognition. So how will a computer be able to capture if someone is signing to the computer? So I've picked 3 important concepts. And if we learn these 3 concepts together, that will help us be able to understand a little bit better this topic of AI. AI is really just like an artificial name. It's something that came out of a science fiction a while ago, and people just kind of decided to use that term. But we don't have that perfect AI yet. It's kind of like Star Trek and how the computer would answer your question and fix everything for you.
Live long and prosper.
And all of that happened on Star Trek. But this has not happened in our time yet. But that's more of what AI actually is. And for example, news anchors kind of attach themselves to that term and continue to use that term. But we really haven't gotten to perfect AI just yet. What we have now is machine learning, abbreviated as ML. We've had that for 40 or 50 years. And most recently, some new things that have come out are called large language model, abbreviated LLM. For large language models. And that is kind of like AI really today is more like an LLM. So in the hearing community, they've been able to use that with speech to text. And now just kind of wondering how that has come about. That has happened for us. So for us tonight, we're going to do the 3 concepts: the machine learning, ML, signal, and feature. So I'm going to give it back to Tim to facilitate this discussion and to see if we can kind of figure out the meaning of those three concepts and how they tie in with sign language recognition.
Yep, this is great. We're hoping to spark some good discussion from this second session and have a good round robin of turn taking about AI. And I'm not going to assign machine like this machine because it's really not a machine. It's what's happening inside the computer and how the computer chips and machine mechanisms are running. So I spell machine learning and language learning. The language learning models, LLMs or large language models, for spoken language, obviously they can follow in the auditory sound, the pattern. Speech, pattern, speech recognition, it picks up on that tone of voice. All the intonations, things like that, it's audible. And so the computer, i.e. the machine, can gather that information from those auditory waves, kind of like baby with new eyes. And the computer can go ahead and make connections based on what it is being inputted. The more it's fed, the more predictability it will have. It can start making these predictions because it's making connections to the information that it's being fed. And then the more it's being fed, the more it's able to predict. The machine becomes more intelligent, if you will, and being able to process information faster. So that's spoken language. But now let's move on to sign language. A huge part of sign language for AI machine learning to be able to grab all that knowledge from a deaf person, which isn't audible, to be able to parse that information via the sign language being presented to it, for the machine to generate and produce an output. What does everybody think about that? Let's go ahead to Erin. You had your hand up first.
This is Erin. I think that's one of the most important parts is definitely the speed. How fast it is, because the variety of our signs, everybody signs at a different pace. Like even before we can even arrive to the point of discussing pacing and how fast it is, how fast is it going to learn? Because if machine learning, what it is currently at, is audio-based, it's grabbing these features of spoken language. What does that machine have? Eyes?
Yeah, you all here. I'd like to make a comment on that. One thing that I'm recognizing when you talked about the computer being able to set up speech and voice waves to gather information. For sign language recognition, or SLR, they're using different technology. The technology cannot be the same as voice. It's going to be catching your motion instead, the sign off your hands. So it is not going to be based on sound. It's going to be based on visual input, which requires 3D access. So your eyes, your face, your mouth, your hands, all of it. People can speak at a far faster rate, and those waves can be generated far more quickly, but that's obviously 2D or audible. So it's very complex with 3D and this visual input. Just to put it out there, it's far more of a complicated process.
Yes, this is Jillian. Just like Erin was mentioning, how will they be able to get that with ASL? It's 3D, it's visual. How will the machine be able to pick that up with the machine learning? The machine taking that in. Also with the SLR, meaning will we need a whole bunch of videos, a whole bunch of data sent in for this? So it just seems like a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Like for the iPhone, for example, you have a camera on the iPhone and it can do facial recognition for your access. It's using a code, but it's actually recognizing your facial features that you have inputted into your phone. So you've had to feed that information. So really, that is 2D being taken into the screen, into your machine. So with SLR, think about just facial recognition and the complexity of that one 2D image, but taking that then to 3D sign language and being able to process that. Again, as a student in software engineering, This is so very complicated.
This is Erin. So adding to that discussion, to Yoel's comment, like the iPhone, for example, we'll use that. Apple, for example, the thing of the future, the thing of media, AI, so to speak. That facial recognition feature, when you hold up the phone, it's a security feature that recognizes your face to open your phone, and they only take it in exact measurements of your still face. So even if I look at the camera, I have to make eye contact with the camera, right? In order for it to recognize my face. Then it'll open. If I'm looking around or if I don't have it still, then it won't recognize my features enough to open. And then you can't be sideways. You have to be head on with that. The static feature has to be perfect in order to open it. So that's not always possible with sign language, right? And I think that's one of the barriers that we're going to see.
Go ahead, Jillian. Go ahead.
This is Jillian. I just want to follow up with Erin's comment and Yoel's as well, and just thinking about that. Having to have a specific movement so that your phone will recognize your face, just like you were talking about, with the speed plus the SLR and the different features and the structures and things like that, with the non-manual markers, facial expressions, tongue movement, all of that. If one little thing is off, and because if the speed doesn't catch it, it could change the meaning. Is technology advanced enough for that? It's just kind of a thought that I've been having. So some of those non-manual signals or classifiers or things like that, I mean, I don't even get how they would be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, our previous session from last week, it could be a one-way dialogue. Like we have text. If a person is doing speaking, then you can do okay one way. But then what about that avatar picking up? In the other way, a person wants to sign or having something like a cartoon or something funny, something like that. Again, it's one way. So then that's input. How am I going to go with output? So how do we have a multi-directional concept happening? So, and also trying to think of how we'd fit the deaf community through our signs as well in the deaf community. So if it's a one way, then there's no way to give a response or be responsive. So it's limiting. Anybody want to? Yeah.
I'm ready to jump in, but Yoel, go ahead.
This is Yoel again. And you are right, Tim. One way. Technology for sure, and SLRs as far as feedback with being able to correct those things. What is available out there? The hearing individuals, hearing people are the ones that are deciding the data, but that can't be the case. There's going to be too many misunderstandings with that. So that's a really good question. Who's feeding it and making that multi-dialogue happen?
This is Erin. So how do you know if that's actually a feature that's able to be fixed? Or is it somehow supposed to just automatically be perfect? Where does it come in? Is it back channeling? Is it back channeling back to me so that I understand? Where is that turn-taking aspect? And where's that connection that we have with this communication? It feels like that portion of it is lacking, right?
And this is Yoel. I would just like to add too, myself, I sign obviously, but sometimes I have errors in my own dialogue, like my own lexicon. I have errors. And so the AI is going to pick up on that, but then how do I get back to correct my information? That makes it even more complex. So what I'm feeding, we don't know if it was the machine that made the mistake or me. Was it the signer or the user that made the mistake? How do you remedy those things?
This is Erin signing. Before we let Steph talk and give her comment, I know she's got her comment that she's holding on to, but really it makes me think of one place. It's just not an AI. Like, for example, if we were to take AI into the courtroom, that is a hard no for me. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion about that, what you're thinking about that, but for me, I just wanted to throw it out there. That's my 25 cents.
This is Jillian speaking. I agree with Erin. In a courtroom, absolutely not. In medical, it could be a complex procedure. I feel like it shouldn't be involved in that either. In the medical profession, some of the terminology is really complex. Sometimes you have to use classifiers to expand on different concepts. How would it do that? I can't think of any way that that would be successful. I don't feel like that would be a good idea to do it in a medical environment.
We have Steph. She's been holding on to her comment for a while.
So this is similar to last week, more of general ideas. I want to focus this kind of back to the ML itself, the machine learning. So the computer could learn the signs and could learn sign language. It has to have that prior to any of the situations that you're describing. So when they were talking about the machine learning and how it would be able to pick up on all of the videos and to get all of that, that would be one of the first things that would be developed. It must have enough data, because how could it recognize those patterns? So, for example, I'm just making up something. So if it was able to, for example, say the 5 of us are having a discussion and we give this data into the computer, into the machine. Now the computer is looking at me, and then it's looking at Tim, and then Yoel, Erin, and then Jillian. So it's 5 different recognitions of sign language. But do we use the same vocabulary? Are we moving the exact same way? Do we have similar backgrounds? That might create some confusion. There's a lot of barriers and a lot of variables for that machine to receive all of that information. And so that signal, it's like the whole picture. It would just kind of be a mess. But the machine would have to be able to pick up all of that, filter it out, figure out what it needs to hold on to, which signal it needs to pick up on, and which one is most important. But then the machine itself doesn't know the actual meaning of what it's picking up on. So then it would say there's a lot of movement. That might be the initial reaction. And then it would have to pay attention to the movement. And then, Tim, go ahead.
So it would almost have to code switch. When I'm in an academic setting or if I'm making videos, I sign one way. But if I'm in an office or if I'm in a casual setting or around friends, then my signing adjusts. It changes. It's that code switching depending on the setting that I'm in. I can't imagine that it would be so complex, the inputs that it would be receiving. Just like even one interpreter, one person, one human interpreter, being able to do all of that work, now it's transferred into a machine. And would a machine be equivalent or superior than a human interpreter? What do you guys think?
Because the signal and why it's called machine learning because it's like we're not really teaching the machine. The machine itself is figuring it out. So it's getting the signals, and then it has to be aware that ASL has many various and important parts of the language. But it's not sure which one. So if we're blinking, it's a normal human behavior to blink your eyes. But sometimes with ASL, a blink could mean something all on its own. And so at the end of the message, I may blink. And research has shown that blinking is a very, very important part of ASL. So how is the machine going to differentiate between a blink and a feature of ASL? Or does it have to have so many examples? It has to have so many examples to be able to catch that nuance. Just the details of all the language.
This is Tim. Even just a subtle quiver of the lip or an eyebrow flinch, those little nuances in our facial features that are the grammar of ASL as a whole. When we look at it as a whole, it's just very complex. So the machine learning, sure, it can pick up on things. Sure, better, faster, more detailed than a human. I'm sure it will be in the future. I mean, do we want that?
Yeah, one other thing I'd like to put out there for consideration is that the lack of data means it won't catch all the patterns. However, once we start using it, over time it will, meaning the AI will learn. It will improve and make adaptations and keep improving. But again, it can also go bad if no one takes accountability to take responsibility for the improvement process. I think that's where my concern lies. Personally, I have more concern on who's feeding the machine. I mean, I don't know if Erin or Jillian, if you wanted to add anything to that, do you think it should be done by big business companies or individual people?
And this is Jillian. Can you clarify a little bit about the liability you were talking about?
Sure. So let's say we have a big company out there and they're building these AI machine learning models, these big language learning systems. For example, are they getting people who actually sign to feed the SLRs? Who is doing the modeling for the work? Are they catching the nuances of facial expressions, the eye blinks, the lip quivers? So in my opinion, I mean, okay, fine, I can accept that, but who are the individuals that are teaching the AI models? Who are you using? I mean, is it going to take a really long time for this model to learn? Are we willing to take risks for the language process? Do we accept this? Are we going to let companies decide? Should accountability be required? Does the government take responsibility? These are just the things I'm thinking about. It's worth thinking about. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts?
You can go first. Yeah, go ahead.
So really, just thinking about it, deaf people have to be involved in that process. Hearing people sometimes take over and make all the decisions, but we don't need that any longer. So deaf people must be involved. And so hopefully those companies will realize that we have to have deaf people involved. We have to have them partnering with us, teaming with us, brainstorming, developing better technology for all of us.
Yes, I completely agree with Jillian.
This is Erin. I'm just thinking about the accountability part of it, that aspect, and what you were talking about. I'm really thinking more in terms, okay, let's say there's a company and they have a term that they think that they want to make these decisions. Is that equitable? Is it sustainable? If yes, then absolutely. This machine learning will continue to grow. It'll continue to learn what we're feeding into it, whatever it's taking from me as the signing person and our movements and our uniqueness and our ambiguities of the future. I just can't believe that this is where we're at right now. But these little steps that we have to take in order to make it get to the future, right? So they have to have the deaf community involved. Of course, they need to collect the data, the samples from the community, and it has to be a vast variety of samples from the community. And people tend to say the deaf community is small, but we aren't small. We're huge. We are ginormous, okay? The irony is that people know each other by myriad of overlapping movements is always happening within this group. There is constant interaction. We learn from each other as humans. We share the same space We observe each other. We notice your non-manual facial communication and wonder about this tiny eyebrow movement and that expression of your eyes. We've just met for the first time. It's fascinating to learn your meanings. This is the natural process of being in community with each other. Are we going to transfer that to a model, those signals, to a sign language recognition system? I think that's huge. How? How will that specific individual, the person behind the scenes with the grand vision, manipulate the buttons and select one specific button for these unique meanings? You know what I mean? Who's going to analyze it? Who's going to do the diagnostic on it? There's so many layers. You really got me thinking about all of this.
Yeah, I see you keep wanting to raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, Erin. As far as accountability, that's definitely making me think about things. For example, if you have a company that's making these decisions to use SLR, and then you have obvious competition, the other company that maybe wants to do it bigger, better, faster. And like Erin said, we are a large community. The deaf community is large. We have numbers. And also being able to improve these, it's going to take, well, quote unquote, they will listen to our feedback, listen to our involvement, our criticisms, our corrections. I know different AI models, they're out there. There might be a different AI model and you might be wanting to use that one or prefer to use this one. If one has sign language over another, then that would definitely be huge for the deaf community to be able to choose.
So I'm trying to summarize some of these points. So we need many users to be involved from the deaf community. And from this group, we have to expand the group. And we need to have a discussion with everyone. And then who is collecting all of the data? Who is that group? And then some from academia, universities, and some from businesses, some privately owned, and some from the public. That's been happening for the last 20 years. The SLR has been going on for the last 20 years. But it's slow. It's very slow. Because the vision is the problem of the technology or the computers being able to record that and to catch it. Recently, we've seen huge improvements in that area. But it's not enough data. And who's going to be writing and designing the complexities of that program? The computer coding, the language for the ML. So we remember the machine itself is learning, but it's learning inside a box, basically. It's inside its own parameters. And people give that to the machine to help it know where to look, what to look for, what signals to keep, what signals to ignore. Those signals become the features, and we've not even touched on the feature portion of it yet.
I wanted to also include, for the sign language recognition aspect, being like you might use games or they might have something more, somebody signs a dialogue to the AI and the machine learns it. They collect my data and then they use that data to lead into the predictions of communications and other signs. So what if, just hypothetically speaking here, what if there was a group who graduated from Gallaudet University or one of those colleges? Do all those individuals have to concur or agree on a feature to donate or to give that information, that data, in order to be used? Because again, the holistic group aspect, does it have to do with the full group consensus or is it based on individual consensus? What does that look like when they collect that data from user groups, from the deaf community? Should it be easy to collect that data? Easy to collect so that we can keep up with spoken language AI? Or should there be rules and regulations surrounding that? Throwing it out there for your input.
Honestly, I think the more the better. I mean, any university who's going to go ahead and specialize with sign language or signs, given those tools provided, that's going to take care of that. The regulations and the agreements and anything in the way of improving, that's all going to help. Definitely for the better for the large society. But it's going to take quality. We have to have quality being provided. So I'm not sure if we know maybe individuals with linguistic backgrounds or within linguistics would be able to provide the information. Maybe Erin and Jillian, do you have any feedback on that specifically, linguistic related?
I think if there was informed consent, that would work. Whatever qualifies to become a tool, or whether it becomes a tool or not, really, that's not the point. But if it is going to be individuals' data or their information being collected, their signs, their uniqueness, their nuances, their characteristics, I think that's where you would need my consent. Think about the consequences of all my data, this personal information. Later on, we don't want to deal with identity theft. We have scams happening all the time, and now people are starting to push back against that. So I think if you have some sort of agreement where you have a group of people that are willing to consent to give their information, then they're able to collect the information from those who consent to give it. I think that's kind of the theory behind user groups. It doesn't matter how many people are in that group, but if they all participate, they're willing participants and they have that consent, they're not forced or shackled to doing it. But definitely within that, they're within some similar parameters and their styles have similarities. But there's always going to be somebody who has something different. There's always going to be somebody who signs something new or different that they're not going to be able to recognize, I think. My opinion definitely needs consent.
Go ahead, Jillian. I know you've got your thoughts running here there.
Yeah, so I've just been thinking, maybe a little bit off topic, but what if we decided to pull these people in? And, with their consent, but then maybe someone cheats. Maybe they find something on Google. They find a video on Google with someone signing, and then there's some videos there with hearing people signing that aren't that great. So what if companies were to go ahead and just take that and use that data?
Yeah, they're signing ASL like homework videos or music, pulling the music videos of people who like to sign the music in ASL.
SLR challenge for sure.
We expect companies to realize that there is a variety of deaf people with different backgrounds. Some were raised more with a speech-oriented approach, some in deaf school, some mainstreamed. So we have a whole bunch of diverse populations, and each group has to have their own consent. I feel like as well. I feel like that would definitely improve it.
Yeah, watching you guys talk here, I definitely agree. I think it's important to have large groups as the sample. Large groups, whether it be a Gallaudet or RIT partnering, but again, must have consent, must be willing. We do not want any breaches of confidentiality. We don't want private information breaches or violations of privacy. I think it does need a large group that has given consent, but also too, we have got to be able to feed the model at the same time. For example, we all use apps all the time. So again, it's important to know Okay, yes, I accept the terms of using that app. I accept the terms of this app in order to improve the system, knowing that your information will be feeding the system. I think that's also something important to think about.
This is Erin again, playing devil's advocate here. What Yoel just said? I suppose I have an app that I'm using and it's taken my information. I agree to the terms and conditions like we do all the time. But what information have they used? Or why haven't they used it? What are they going to use the information for? They haven't used my information yet, but how are they going to use it? Because I would prefer that I have the opportunity to decide what information they're going to take and not take it at all or parts of it.
Yeah, and this is Yoel again. It just depends on if you click accepting of those terms and conditions, then they can use anything that you give it. So you just need to be aware that they will be using your data. I think that's what's more important. But I do agree. What are they using? I know we talked about this last week. We said, well, if it happens, then we hit accept. And the company is saving the information on their software platform. And then they can decide whether they're going to keep it or delete it or disseminate it elsewhere. And we don't know. So how are we going to watch and monitor the aftermath of those things? Again, so very complicated.
Suppose we do give some sort of consent to take our data or information, but at any time, if we would want to withdraw that information, we no longer want them to use or collect our data. We could give it for a point of time, and it could withdraw for that consent. What would be something that you would participate in for different AI apps, for different programs, applications? Is that something you would consider? Are you still reluctant?
I don't know if you know, but Google already has a site where you can download the information and you can ask to have that information deleted. So with sign language specifically, I don't know. Newer companies will have to see if they allow that feature. I'm not sure. I know Google at first did not have it, and then they added it as one of their releases. So again, I don't know. Each company would have to decide that policy. So in my opinion, that's what I would think it would need to be added on.
This is Erin. I think my concern would be the bias involved. This is global, right? To summarize what we've talked about, machine learning to LLMs at the global scale is premised on auditory inputs and identifying a person's features, characteristics, and nuances. And then what? We can just withdraw the information. They can get rid of that audio-based information. They can delete words and voices, leaving no identifying features of an actual person. In contrast with SLR, where they're taking my humanistic features, my characteristics. It's looking at me. It's judging me. When I understand what they're taking from me, I want it to withdraw this information. And then what? What do we do with that information? How do I know to get a guarantee about the data once I've withdrawn my consent? How do I know where the information is, that it's been destroyed, what's done with it? How do I know what's actually gone? They're like, yeah, sure, no problem, you withdraw. But there's no guarantee that the data is destroyed. Maybe they could use it for something else. And then at the end of the day, the data is still data. Facial recognition features are still facial recognition features, and we still have biases. We have not yet arrived to world peace.
I agree completely.
If they had a way of collecting our data, getting our information from individual users, exact features like the shape of our eyes or the distance to your nose, to your chin, and all that. And it wasn't necessarily your picture, but there was just a lot of different data points. It wasn't necessarily exactly what you looked like, but more to connect how you move, how your face changes, and put that into a picture. If you were to get that from the large data sets from many, many different inputs, from many different users, and then they were able to make a model of that, that would be used to make those predictions of what the sign would be or what the sentence is going to be and what those non-manual markers are going to look like. So from that, the machine would be able to learn those, maybe 89, 90% of that, of what the small non-manual marker or small looks like. And yet, 8% of the time, it means something else. And then it does its best to kind of make those predictions to figure out how sign language is used. So if it captures those data points from multiple user groups, not necessarily the specific person, not what your characteristics are, not your identity, not that, but really that's what the point of the data. If that's what were to happen, again, removing individual characteristics aside, more vector-based, what would you say to that?
What do you mean by personal identifiers?
The things that make Yoel unique. Who you are, what you're wearing today. But just more general. It collects these nuances, these signs from a large group. So it collects this huge data set. And again, it's not on you, Yoel, or Aaron, or Jillian, to predict what you are going to sign next. Instead, it's holistic. The model is made up of many multiple signers. So it uses that information to identify those patterns. It comes up with those predictions. That's what I mean.
This is a good example of where the signal will come in. Because of the complexity of the algorithm. There's no emotions attached to it, but it does have an interest in the patterns of individual people. So it would be benefiting from the group, from a collective of people, and the patterns of the movement that each person would make. So if you move this way, then it would capture that signal and give it a label. And then if you move this way, it would mean something different. So now what's interesting about ML and about bias maybe as it's receiving that recognition, it's maybe something we haven't thought about yet. We've already divided in the field of linguistics non-manual signals, morphemes, phonemes, and we've created linguistic categories. But the machine isn't following that. Maybe it's making up its own patterns and making up different categories. From that, it is then matching the sign language, the ASL, or another sign language. So there would be many, many samples that would need to be acquired. And just diverse ages, skin color, race, gender, just different fluency, skill level. I think that would become more of the challenge. Home science being involved in that. So it's really important for the machine to be able to have this flexibility, to be able to have a range that would fit certain categories, and to be able to capture the meaning. So, like Tim was talking about, to be able to predict those patterns.
Yoel, you wanted to add something?
Yes, thanks. I just want to add about what Stephanie just said. It's a challenge because the challenge lies with people who, again, the developers who are involved, their specific awareness of what's happening in the machine and what the AI is making decisions about regarding right and wrong. Like, what is right and what is wrong. We mentioned data, but really it's behind the scenes, what's happening within the machine itself. So all of those little kind of notes that are happening inside, all of those little details, and it's like, no, wait, if you have to go back and fix something, then that's what's wrong. Then that's what's going to be complex and really hard to go back and if you have to fix something. So we can try our best, but I do have a concern because it's a huge challenge, and then going and trying to get your information back.
I know we've heard from Steph and Yoel. Other thoughts?
This is Erin. That would be a very long law. It would be huge, a very long proposal that we would have to say to fit within our regulations.
We would have to include a lot of what ifs within the law. Really fine print, if you will.
Well, okay. Suppose we just let the AI go. Unleash the beast like a wild stallion out on the field. And we just let it go. Okay, fine. And it could collect all the information it wanted to collect and do all the things it needed to do. 200,000, 300,000 deaf individuals have all given their input. So suppose we had that, and it's picking up on patterns and what's happening with the eyes, recognizing eye signals, and recognizes information from me and from you and from all of us. And so we have some cohesion, let's say. ASL is a shared language. It's a shared language with a group of users. So suppose we have all of that. Okay, familiar to. We have some similarities. We have some similarities over here, some similarities maybe regionally, over here being able to get some identifying data. Like Erin said, okay, so this is Erin and I'm signing. And it's like maybe we have 100 people. They are signing similarly to Erin.
Oh my.
With her background and her style and her movement and kind of the ways of her hands and that kind of thing. So it would be able to classify that group of Erins of Vermont style to then make predictions, pick up on those patterns, which helps making better predictions. The machine calculates using math and the data to predict within a particular signing variety. Or maybe there's a group that has a way of fingerspelling names, or the transitions before, after fingerspelling, or forms letters in a certain way. This is what leads to improvement. Numbers, hard shapes. These are examples. So I'm kind of thrilled. Are we thrilled about that? I don't know. That seems exciting.
One thing you said, it's a shared language. Absolutely. So if the machine is able to pick up on that in the group of users, in the AI tool or whatever, if you have something that's being interpreted or signed and it's like, okay, but I want to know where they got that sign from. You see a new sign, let's say, or using it for interpretation purposes. It's like, well, where did that sign come from? They came from people, from me, ourselves. I don't want AI to get it from somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? I want to know that what I am seeing came from another human being, not just out of thin air.
This is Erin. Can it become humanistic? Can it become a signer? It can come from AI. That's a little... Okay, so it means that it will... Sorry, this is the interpreter. Do you mind starting again? It'd become an erasure? Like it's going to start from my signs. It's going to start originating from the way I sign because it's exposed and I started being exposed to it. So that's going to go on and it's going to become eternalized in me. I'm going to start learning from AI. My gosh, here we have generations of deaf people and now AI is starting to influence us. That gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, but yeah. Interpreter says she's freezing a little bit. I think if I can think about what that looked like, what that could become, because at this point right now, we're talking about anything's possible. We already made improvements just based on ethnicity, gender, different categories, different signing styles. We all have these different classifications. And so all of these factors to being able to identify it would be able to recognize Tim. So AI would recognize Tim and be like, that was a very Tim thing to do. I can't get along without that, without having some type of identifying information about you. So taking that information, I think maybe my signing style too, I'm like, all right, well, sure, take it, put it together, make an app, morph it into something else.
Yes.
I know. We're getting close on time, so I want to recognize that.
Oh, bummer.
This has been a great discussion, trying to figure out, kind of all these pathways and all these, options and what AI can do. So are you feeling, do you feel like the deaf community is ready for that? Back to our initial question, Tim's asking here, do we feel like, we could do sign language recognition, this SLR concept? I know for the audience here, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts and you're thinking, okay, is the deaf community truly ready for that? Steph, I don't know. Do you want to add anything here before we wrap up and close out?
I have many thoughts, of course, but I really, really appreciate everyone and your comments. And just thinking about some of the dangers, the weaknesses, the pros and cons, the possibilities, just all of it. It's a heavy burden, actually, to try to predict these types of things. And we can see what is happening in the near future with the deaf community and SLR. And because of the influence that is happening with technology, it's happening a lot faster. I think AI is showing up a lot more within the deaf community. How well that's done, how broad is it? Is the deaf community involved? Maybe not as much as it should be, but we need a lot more of the community investment. So we want to find out more about who is ready and who is not ready. One thing about research that's really important about the informed consent process, meaning that you can withdraw your consent. So it would be safer than a regular app. So a regular app, you sign in and you give your permission, but as Erin pointed out, it would be really hard to take it back. It's almost like it would have surveillance on you all the time. But the research, it would be different. Tim, you want to add?
Yeah, in informed consent, you have several principles. You have to understand the risks and the benefits involved to be sure there's no exploitation or taking advantage of sensitive information specific to different groups or people. You have to understand the rules, the ethics, the information. That's the data. That's being gathered from the individuals that are willing to participate. So there's a lot that goes on into informed consent and the concept of developing those policies, those laws, making sure everything you have really set up and in place beforehand, and then making sure you have a system that you can trust, that you're trusting, that they are doing what they say with their data. Again, the tools and the benefits for the deaf community. That's going to be the challenge. This is easy to talk about in theory, but actually get your hands in there and do the work is a whole different story. So unfortunately, we have hit 8 o'clock on the dot. I really would like to thank all of you for joining and participating tonight in this discussion as we unpack AI and what the future looks like for us. Our next meeting will be next week again, Monday evening. That's going to be November 6th. Am I correct?
Yeah.
That's the 6th, right. And it'll be 7 to 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, again for our third discussion. And that will be our last one. So I know we've probably do more in the future and more presentations and webinars and discussions. It's definitely a topic that will continue on and is not going away anytime soon. So again, We will see you next week for our third webinar. Thank you so much and see you there.